Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla, I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Oversight Live. I am Ben Carpenter, and this is, what is today? Today's the 11th of March. It's a Wednesday. It's warmed up slightly from the below zero temperatures we had this morning here in Alaska. And I say slightly, it's maybe 10, 12 degrees warmer. Maybe even more than that. Anyway, still cold, but warmer than it was this morning. Anyway, what is Oversight Live? Well, Oversight Live is new. In Alaska, we have a state capitol and a legislature, and most of our state government's in Juneau, and it's off the road system, which means the only way you can get to it is by plane or by ferry, and it's cost prohibitive for most people in both time and money to be able to get to your government, to your legislature, to see the legislative session happening. So what we're going to do is provide oversight by bringing you content, regular, relative, convenient content for you to be able to see what's happening and follow along in our representative government here. It's a greater challenge for more of a greater challenge for Alaskans than it is most Americans to engage with our government. And this distance and not having a road is a problem, but we do have technology that is able to give us information and help us overcome that hurdle of not be able to drive to our capital. So that's what I'm about. I am going to help bring you information so that you're better informed. You're going to have my bias. You're not going to have to deal with the liberal media bias reporting on what happens. I'm going to show you the actual truth. Like we're going to watch the session or watch the committee meeting tonight, and you're going to see the truth of what's happening down there. You'll have my bias and my commentary, and I'm unabashedly a fiscal and social conservative, but you're free to not watch the show if that offends you. I'm going to do my best to engage with you. If you've got questions during the committee about anything that you're watching, or the background, or why are they doing things, or why are they not doing things, or whatever, just chat in your chat window there on YouTube, and it'll come to me. I'll see it, and then we'll engage on it. If you're watching the recording and you want to ask a question or have a comment, you can email me at producer@oversightlive.com, and I will do my best to respond to you and I get your answer. If you've got a really good question in either case, don't be surprised if I bring it up on air here and answer the question to edify everyone. Okay, well, at the end of the day, we're going to try to have fun too. This is sometimes it's dry material dealing with government, but you know what? We've got an obligation to do self-government. And if people don't spend the time and get educated, then those who do are going to call the shots. So that's kind of where we're at. I served 6 years in the legislature, and that experience, and specifically the Alaska State Legislature, And that experience is something that taught me a lot. And for the time that we have together, I'm going to do my best to impart that information to you. Okay. If you can tell, my voice is a little off. I'm suffering from a head cold today, and that's why we didn't have a show yesterday, because it was worse then. But I'm medicated up, and we're ready to go. So Senate Resources today had a meeting that had the Alaska Energy Authority come in and give a presentation. And their presentation was on the Railbelt transmission line. It was an update. And this is a project that has been discussed and funded to some extent in previous years. And it's an important project for the state of Alaska. But I thought we would just have a quick conversation. We're gonna jump in, and the meetings, this portion of the meeting that's pertinent is less than half an hour. We're going to step through some of it, and I may fast forward through some of it. But anyway, but does everybody know what the AEA is? The Alaska Energy Authority. Maybe I should start there and just kind of give an update, or bring everybody up to speed on what the AEA is. So sharing my screen here, this is the website for the Alaska Energy Authority. It's akenergyauthority.org. And it has a board of directors. It's a corporation of the state of Alaska. And you can go on here and find out who the board of directors are. Here they are. You can find out what they do. What's interesting, if you're going to have to go to the, where are we at here? I wanted to get to the Alaska statutes that created it. Let me share that portion of of my page here, because that's important for this conversation. Okay, let me make it bigger so you can see. All right, so this is the Alaska statutes that created the Alaska Energy Authority. Okay, purpose and powers. I don't want to go too far here because then it'll jump me out of here. Okay, so powers of authority, and further of its corporate purposes, the authority has the following powers in addition to other powers. So it's just going to define what the powers are for the corporation here, right? To improve, equip, operate, and maintain power projects and bulk fuel, waste energy, energy conservation, energy efficiency, and alternative energy. Issue bonds, sell, lease, or... Okay, what I want to get to here is one of these down here that's really interesting. Recommend to the legislature the pledge of the credit of the state to guarantee repayment on all or any portion of revenue bonds. Okay. A lot of this is... All right, here's what I wanted to get to. Promote energy conservation, energy efficiency, and alternative energy through training and public education. All right. By statute, the power of the legislature has been endowed to the Alaska Energy Authority to acquire a Susitna River power project, whether by construction, purchase, gift, or lease, including the acquisition of property rights and interests by eminent domain under AS-09. Okay, so this is interesting because the statute, when this was created, specifically recognized that the Susitna River project is something that ought to be pursued. Well, there's also a requirement for the Alaska Energy Authority to present a report to the legislature annually on this Susitna River power project. So there is a report out, and I can show that to you. But the authority shall prepare not later than the first day of each regular session of the legislature an annual report summarizing the status of the Susitna River power project and notify the legislature the report is available. So there is a executive order that was signed in the previous administration to Dunleavy that put a halt to any funding or work on this Susitna River Power Hydro project. The statute still exists that the AEA is supposed to update the legislature every year on furthering the project. And we don't have a conversation in the legislature. In 6 years that I was in the legislature, we never seriously considered what was necessary to make this power project happen. We talked a lot about alternative energy and spending federal dollars on wind and solar projects in the state. But we never seriously considered this thing that's in statute that says, hey, you ought to be pursuing this, okay? And I'm going to go to the report that they created, because then we're going to jump to this conversation in the Senate Resources Committee that's talking about transmission lines. Okay, we'll see if there's a connection between statutory authority and statutory responsibility here to be furthering a Susitna River power project, similar to the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation that was chartered with creating a natural gas pipeline. Okay. Here you've got a charter to get a Susitna River power project. All right. So what does it say? What does it say in the, see if I can get the other. Okay. Make sure. All right. So we want to go to this screen here. There we go. All right. Make this bigger because you can't see that. Oh, I have to go over here. There we go. Okay. So notice that this is January 20th, 2026. Okay. So this is current data. Let me jump real quick. This is addressed to the Speaker and the President of the Senate, so it's addressed to the legislature, right? And this is coming from Curtis Thayer, who's also doing the briefing today. He's the Executive Director of the Alaska Energy Authority. Okay, so as required by the statute that we just reviewed, the AEA provides an update to the legislature on the status of the Susitna-Watana hydroelectric project each year. On December 6, 2014, Administrative Order 271 issued by then Governor Walker sent the project to abeyance. So I'm going to pause there for a second and say that since 2014, the legislature has not addressed this. The legislature created a law that said, Alaska Energy Authority, you will go after this, right? And we want you to report back to the legislature every year on the progress of this report. This report will detail why that's important, okay? So we'll get to that in just a second. But every year afterwards, that the legislature has just allowed Governor Walker to suspend the project. He put the project to abeyance, a suspension of the project, and all discretionary spending came to an end by the close of calendar year 2017, right? So this is the executive branch who doesn't make law and who doesn't change law overriding the statute. This, in my opinion, is super frustrating because the legislature was very clear in statute. AEA closed out the project, yet preserved the value of the state of Alaska's investment and maintained the public value of the data collected through careful, thorough archiving. FERC's updated study plan determination provides the state with certainty on what is needed for a complete FERC license application if the project is restarted. With its study plan determination, FERC reaffirmed the scope of studies necessary for determining impact assessment and developing protection, mitigation, and enhancement measures. FERC validated the quality and integrity of work completed to date. To the extent which the project proposal does not change baseline conditions, FERC ruled AEA would not need to repeat the already completed integrated licensing process steps. If restarted, FERC may require additional scoping and modifications. Okay, so what's the current status of the project? Engineering. The completed engineering feasibility report contains the information necessary for a license application and demonstrates the project is technically feasible. What are the economics of the project? The benefit, cost, and economic impact analysis concluded that if constructed, the project would generate billions of dollars in energy savings for the Railbelt and would provide significant long-term benefit to the economy. Financing. AEA investigated various financing models, some of which resulted in an estimated 0.066 per kilowatt hour, 50-year average real price in 2014 dollars. So that's probably greater today, maybe even 10 cents a kilowatt hour is what it would cost ratepayers, I think is what this is saying, to put this project in place. Licensing. AEA is approximately 2/3 into the integrated licensing process. Had the project not been shut down following FERC's issuance of the updated SPD, SPD is your, where is it here? Study plan determination. In 2017, the next steps would have been the implementation of the second study season, followed by preparation of final reports and licensing application. Governor Dunleavy issued AO Administrative Order number 309, rescinding, amongst others, AO 271, which resulted in the removal of the fiscal restraint previously ordered. This order has not changed the status of the project. So we're still not doing the project. Even though the executive order that put it in abeyance has been rescinded. As part of AEA's continuous and ongoing operational work in furtherance of its mission to reduce the cost of energy in Alaska, this is key. This really is key. To reduce the cost of energy in Alaska, AEA was significantly involved in the Alaska Energy Security Task Force in providing technical information. I happen to know that the focus of the AEA has been in obtaining and distributing federal grant dollars for alternative energy projects. The focus has not been on the statutory requirement to further a dam, the Susitna-Watana Dam. So this task force that they participated in said, update this project plan. Update construction cost economics, determine licensing approach, make a go, no-go decision for FERC licensing. In 2024, the Alaska Center for Energy and Power published a report titled Alaska's Railbelt Electric System Decarbonization Scenarios for 2050. So this is what AEA has been focused on, is decarbonization. Per Appendix R of this report, adjustments were made to AEA's 2014 construction cost estimates of $5.5 billion. The resulting amount is $9 billion in 2023 dollars. The assumed Susitna-Watana fixed operation O&M, operation and maintenance, equals $26.5 million per year in 2014 dollars, adjusted for CPI to $34 million. In May of 2025, the Railbelt utility sent a letter to the governor expressing support for this dam, this hydroelectric project. AEA has spent no state funds on the development of Susitna-Watana project since the issuance of AO 309 in 2019. The Susitna-Watana Dam would be a concrete dam with an approximate height of 705 feet and maximum capacity of 600 megawatts. Would produce about 60% of the current electric demand and move the railboat to 80% renewable energy. Central location enables power to be readily accessible along the rail belt. The project would directly and indirectly create over 32,000 jobs and create $11 billion in savings by replacing natural gas generation. And why in the world are we not focused on this? Is it because there's this large price tag up here? We have lack of vision to try to figure out where you're going to come up with the money that it's going to take to build it. I mean, that's That's why you would never have a natural gas pipeline built from the North Slope. It's too expensive to do, right? But here we are on the very end, tail end of this project, where it's looking more and more likely like we're going to have a project. Now, I'm gonna eat crow if the gas line project doesn't come to fruition, because then the analogy here would not work. But if we've got a state corporation tasked with creating a pipeline, and you've got a state corporation that's tasked with creating a Susitna hydroelectric project, and it's not doing the hydroelectric project, you got to ask the question, what in the world, who did we hire? What is the focus if it's not doing this? And we've already, they've already acknowledging the benefit that the state would have for this project. AEA is proud of the work completed to advance this hydroelectric project. The effort has yielded significant benefits in terms of knowledge produced and shared, and understanding of this resource potential to offer stable, low-cost power to Alaskans over the 100-year life of the project upon completion. Okay, that's really great to know. All right, so let's jump to Senate Resources Committee and see if we hear anything in this approximate 30 minutes that talks about. Now, I know we're going to be talking about the transmission, right? But let's see if there's any impetus or sense of urgency with regard to figuring out a supply of electricity. And to answer your question, let me make sure here. What are your views on the Bradley Lake expansion legislation? I haven't read legislation, but I'm not sure what legislation you're referring to, but in principle, I am in favor of the Bradley Lake expansion project. I'm in favor of hydroelectric power that reduces the cost of electricity and provides more energy for entrepreneurs to do what entrepreneurs do, to capitalize on natural resources and opportunities that exist when you have low cost energy. And the state of Alaska's got plenty of hydro potential, and we should be tapping into it in multiple places. I don't buy the excuse that it's expensive and we can't figure out how to do it. It just means that you haven't put enough time and effort into developing a project and finding a connection, right? The gas line situation is point number one. There will be generations of Alaskans that benefit from having a natural gas line from North Slope, just like there would be generations that would benefit from having a Susitna-Watana dam or a dam in some other place that provides the same type of energy. Now, we're also having a conversation in this state right now about a clean coal plant getting put in the valley, Matsu Valley area, and a data center going in. Data center is going to need and demand a lot of electricity. Okay, I'm off on a soapbox here. This is to say that a data center could use hydroelectric power just as much as it could clean coal. All right, so I am at the Gavel, Alaska website. This is ktoo.org. You can go here to watch the committee in its entirety if you so choose. And I'm going to play this here from the beginning, and you're going to hear the update from Curtis Thayer on the transmission project.
Energy Authority, and I'll welcome Curtis Thayer to the table. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. All right. For the record, my name is Curtis Thayer, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Alaska Energy Authority. And as we start every presentation, a little about AEA programs and services. Primarily, we focus today on our owned assets, which is the Bradley Lake Hydro Facility, the Alaska Intertie, what we call the Sterling to Quartz Creek transmission line, and the Cook Inlet Power Link, which is a sample in front of the the chair. We also do the Power Cost Equalization Program, which is a $46 million program that helps rural Alaska, 188 communities in rural Alaska, offset their high cost. And it looks at the cost of Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau, which is roughly 20 cents a kilowatt, and will pay up to 75 cents a kilowatt into rural Alaska to help offset those costs. Also in rural Alaska, we have bulk fuel upgrades, rural power system upgrades we do. We also have a circuit rater program where we have 4 people that travel in rural Alaska doing training, and also for several communities, they are the 911 call if the lights go out and they have problems. And we also respond, obviously, to electrical emergency assistance. We do a lot with renewable energy, whether that be biomass, electric vehicles. The NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Program, lives within that program. It's $37 million is one of those programs. We have two other grants at $37 million each, total of 74 for home energy rebates and home efficiencies. Which we do partner with Alaska Housing on. They're a better fit in the sense of they have the programs. They did not qualify for the grant. We qualified for it, but we work together on those type of opportunities so we don't create 2 silos. We have one and we can get the money to where it needs to go.
Again, we're listening to Curtis Thayer, who's the executive director of the Alaska Energy Authority, and he's addressing the Senate Resources Committee today.
We also have grants and loans, which we will, if we have time, we can talk about the Renewable Energy Fund, the REF. We also have the Power Project Fund and several federal grants. One of the things I will say with the Power Project Fund is after the typhoon this past fall, several communities, we have lent them bridge money from that fund because they need to do emergency repairs, but their FEMA money wasn't quite there yet. So we provided the bridge funding to help those communities. Energy planning.
Bridge funding is not funding to build bridges. It is money that would be used in and repaid when federal funding comes in.
Whether it be the governor's task force, state energy security profile, which is a requirement every year that be updated. We do that. And then we do have an electric library that is forward facing. We have 12,000 documents on it. So if you want to find things that we've done going back our 50 years, you can type it in and pull anything up. We've scanned everything. And then we have a 401D grid resilience program, which we can talk about a little bit later. We have the Railbelt Transmission Organization, which is currently in its 4th week of hearings at the RCA. I will leave it at that. Hopefully there's closing arguments this week. The 2 biggest items on the Railbelt for the status update is the Bradley Lake expansion. We've been talking that for a long time. The total cost is about $400 million. Through the legislature and AEA, we have raised $20.7 million for pre-construction cost. And we'll talk about funding in a little bit later. But we're at the point where we did file our initial FERC amendment last month. They look at it roughly with FERC for about four months, and then we file the formal application or amendment. And that normally would take 18 to 2 years, but we've been working with FERC ahead of time, answering a lot of questions, met with all 5 FERC commissioners. We've had some travel out to Bradley, and they think they can do the review in less than a year, let's just say, which is huge. It means we could probably be in construction possibly by spring of next year or early summer. The second item, there's more on this later, but the Cook Inlet Power Link, also known as the GRIP application. The cost of that is $413 million. We have $270 million identified. Funds still needed is about $142 million. The Bradley Lake expansion itself.
Yes. If you could pause for
Sorry.
a moment, Mr. Thayer, Senator Clayton had a question.
Is the display here, does this relate back to the?
That relates back to the GRIP application, the Cook Inlet Power Link.
Follow?
Well,
So this would be the cable that gets laid down to transfer the power.
Yes, and to put it a little bit in perspective, 30 that way it weighs 30 pounds for a foot of it, and we need 80 miles of it. And if you look, there's a lot of copper in there. And then you have the insulator along with stainless steel protector, and then the sheath that goes around it.
we could pass it around.
You're more than welcome. It is heavy, and you're more than welcome to pass it
Don't
around.
worry about
I
that.
mean,
We're going with the Cook Inlet Power Link
Okay.
because when we're doing our federal applications on different items, they don't know it as GRIP or HVDC. That was what the project is. We know internally, but we do use Cook Inlet Power Link.
So, okay. So we will all hopefully start referring to it as the Cook Inlet Power Link. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So with the Bradley expansion, I mentioned that we've already filed the draft amendment. It will increase Bradley by about 50%, which is about 30,000 homes. The target completion for Bradley would be 2031 to have water flowing. That will displace 1.5 billion cubic feet of natural gas, which is 7.5% of the unmet need of it. A little bit on the schedule as far as Bradley is concerned, where you see where we are in 2026. The reason that we had a light year last year is getting all the geotechnical work and environmental work done. And then we have working in 27. We are looking at in Washington, D.C. for federal funding. I have a slide on that, and I'll the Cook Inlet Power Link, which you see it a resemblance. This is a lighter weight of cable, but similar of how it is spooled, and then will be a jet will create a trench that we laid in the trench. There needs to be 2 of those for redundancy across Cook Inlet, and this will be able to handle up to 200 megawatts bi-directional. So you could have one going one way or another way. Needing. And really, we don't have any redundancy off of Cook Inlet or out of the Kenai Peninsula, and we need to have redundant lines all the way to Fairbanks. And I'm not recommending it, but if we were FERC regulated, there would be a requirement that we have 2 lines. And we've had some very, very close calls. We had the fire down on Swan Lake Fire about 5 years ago. The northern utilities were cut off from power for 4 months, but it was in the summertime. But it still cost the ratepayers $12 million more because they didn't have access to the Bradley low-cost power. And for the first time in a long time, we were spilling water over the dam. And then just a couple of years ago, we had a line, we had an avalanche and a boulder almost take out a tower, dented a tower of ours. But if that tower had gone down, if that boulder had taken that tower out, it probably would have pulled 2 or 3 more down, and Fairbanks would have been cut off from power from South Central for probably several months at least until you get it rebuilt. So there's been several close calls.
Senator Rocher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through the chair, I was just wondering if we were to have the money to order this cable, because I don't believe it's on order yet, correct?
That's correct.
If we were to have the money to order this cable, how long does it take for it to actually be delivered to the project?
Through the chair, the lead time is looking at probably about 3 years. The one thing I will mention, and it's just as other projects, wind projects on the East Coast have been canceled or delayed, that has actually freed up some of the build slots, but it's still quite a process for what we need. And for what we need, it's very impressive here when you look at it. Some of the cabling on the East Coast is even larger, and it's too large for us to use. So we can't take advantage of that, but we would have to have that specially built in that for Alaska. And that was the representation of it.
And one quick follow-up.
Yes, Brusher.
Where's the projected place it would come from?
Okay.
We would look to have it in the United States or with one of our partners, not China. There's only a few places in the world that can build that. But we are looking for U.S. build of that.
And it is going to be in the U.S. are 2 different things. So
the Cook Inlet Power Link, we do have, like I said, we've identified money that we have. We have the legislature has given us about $14 million. We had a bond of $50 million that we repurposed for the Cook Inlet Power Link match. And so when you see very little spent in 24 and 25, we had the experience of being doged. And so we had to go through a whole process for 3 months looking at our project. And I will say at the end of the project, 2/3 of the GRIP application or two-thirds of the GRIP projects were canceled. Only a third moved forward, and we moved forward. in that, and they actually said that we had one of the best projects and the most furthest along of any state. And so they actually gave us like a 3-month head start to say, go forth. You're not going to get the formal letter. We've got to cancel others, but go ahead and do. And so what you see here in for 26 and 27, that's when we're doing a lot of the environmental, a lot of the engineering, and that is also the timeline in 27, 28 when we need to order and put down on building the cable. And then you see the construction as the continue. And then the other part is actually laying it, because you have to order a ship to do that. And that takes a year, at least in advance, to have a ship available to lay the cable. And by the grant agreement, by federal law, we have to have this in service by 2032. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is Department of Energy has kind of said, where's your line of sight on your balance of your GRIP match? And so that's been an ongoing conversation. They're not threatening to take it away. They're just saying, tell us how you're going to get the money. How are we going to complete this project in the next 5 years? Very good questions. With that brings the fact that we've engaged some partners. Hutton is a law firm in DC. They're helping us with a tax credit, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have ORIC, which is our bond counsel, but obviously financing and energy and infrastructure is key. And then we've also had PFM, which is Public Financing Advisory and Capital Planning. And some information that I don't have that I will share with you when I do have it is they're running modeling like on Bradley as far as the cost per kilowatt, depending on tax credits and different variances, so we can see what the cost is actually to the consumer down to the kilowatt. And so we're running all those financial models right now. And so we have good professionals. PFM and ORIC we've worked with for years. Hutton is a new addition, but that was because of the tax credit, and we don't have expertise on the tax credit. But potential financing partners. The first one is the Department of Energy, Energy Dominance Financing. They normally do large scale projects. They don't normally like to touch anything under $1 billion. But we've approached them, and they are currently reviewing a 1,000-page application we submitted on Bradley Lake and transmission. And they're in that review. There's still additional information we need to get them, but they're looking at how they can possibly finance $400 million, and their rate is a treasury bond. So you're looking at 4.5% money. There's some fee, there's some points, and then they charge 3/8 also for the money. And there's different, with the term sheet, obviously there's different conditions of when you can take the money and advance it and paying it back and everything of that nature. And at the same time, there's the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Utility Services, RUS, Special Borrowing Program. And we're engaged with them in completing an application to look at, we don't want to put them, we're kind of putting them side by side. The USDA actually has the same treasury bond, but their rate is 1/8, not 3/8. But of course, they have different terms of financing and paying it back. And so we have to weigh all those. And then on top of that, Bradley qualifies for tax exempt bonds. That actually is a provision that Senator Stevens had put in 35 years ago, we discovered. And with that, so there's the advantage of possibly using part of the capital stack in the tax.
Okay, so what we're learning here, at least in this slide, I'm not sure whether slide 10 is going to have additional potential financial partners. All of those are government related. You're either going to go into debt somehow, or you're going into debt to somebody, or you're going to use federal dollars of some sort, which is also debt, at least 25% of it, because we don't have a balanced budget. So a lot of this, and this is a major project, right? So you would say, well, the debt gets repaid over the life of the project, and so it's a good use of debt. That's where I come down. My philosophical point here is government building big projects that enable economic activity with debt that gets paid back over time is an appropriate use of money, of public money that's going to benefit the public. Like, you and I can't create a large hydro plant by ourselves. Now, there is also the opportunity right now to be having conversations with industry who needs greater electricity. So I would think that the opportunity exists to have conversations with people who are firms that know they need to smelt raw materials. They need to melt raw materials, and also data centers. As to whether there's a possibility to partner with the cost, developing the cost, if they get some of the use of the electricity. I happen to know that some of those conversations with data centers were going on with HEA, but it sounds like, at least in this first iteration, first attempt, it didn't pan out. Anyway, I'm going to move us on here just a little bit.
Something that I get to decide. This is something that goes to our board of directors. They will look at it in addition to that and approve it. But in addition to that, the utility boards are going to have to approve the term sheets, because at the end of the day, they were the ones that agreed to be on the hook to pay for this. This project will be owned by AEA, but they're going to be the ultimate users of the power. And we, in our conversations with them, we're going to use the same amount of power that each one receives. For example, Chugach gets 56% of Bradley water, so they will get 56% of the Bradley diversion, and they will pay 56% of the cost associated with it. Golden Valley gets 17%. They will pay 17% of the cost of this. And this is the power sales agreement we've had for 35 years. So it's pretty straightforward. And obviously, we do have interest from other parties wishing to buy power, but obviously our focus is on the utilities and having them have that option first.
I wonder who else wants to buy power. I get that the utilities, meaning us, Alaskans, our homes and our current businesses are we need to make sure that we have reliable electricity. But I wonder, and if I was there, I would be asking the question, right? What are the others that we've been considering? Are these businesses, or is this government money, or what are we talking about?
A little bonus that I like to put in here as far as an investment tax credit, and that is that Bradley could qualify up to $100 million potential tax credit. It's somewhere between 6 to 25% of the total project cost. So it could be 24 million, could be 25, it could be $100 million. This was actually in the big, beautiful bill. And you have to increase capacity, and we're not changing the nameplate capacity of the dam, because we're raising the dam. We're raising the dam 16 feet, and we are doing the directional drill to put more water into it. There will be a little bit of additional head pressure. And so this is where there is a provision that the Secretary of Treasury could look at it and make a determination if this would qualify. So we have met with the Deputy Secretary of Treasury, met with him, met with, I will say, 6 tax attorneys that never smiled. But when we left the meeting, we got word from Senator Sullivan's office that the Secretary wanted to work with us on this to see if there was a way to make sure that we qualified for a tax credit. We're not asking for anything. We're asking for something special because the bill's new and nobody's asked for this provision before, this particular qualification. So we're working through it. That's where Hunton comes in. They're helping us with that as far as writing or developing that process of asking. But again, what this would be is if Bradley's $400 million and we get $100 million at completion, then we can apply that $100 million against the project right there. And it's a $300 million project.
Senator Dunbar, question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you explain a little bit more how these tax credits would work? Because you're a tax exempt organization. So are you selling them or providing them to industry in some way, or how does it work exactly?
That's the interesting thing, through the chair. That's one of the interesting things with these tax credits, that upon completion, we can sell the tax credits during the process, because we'll know if we qualify in advance, or the federal government will write us a check. It was something that has to incentivize and work with infrastructure projects. So normally, yes, if you pay taxes, you would get a tax credit off it. Instead, they'll give us an elective tax credit and write us a check, even as a nonprofit.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right.
One thing with these projects, like investment tax credits, Cooking the Power Link or the GRIP, it does not qualify. So some of these don't qualify. Also, the Department of Energy won't loan on the project, on the cabling project, the GRIP funding, because they already gave us the 206 million, so they don't want to double dip. But this is where the Department of Ags come in, and they say that this was it's kind of an interesting conversation. We met with a gentleman who worked there 35 years, and he said, "Let me think." I said, "You guys had a loan in 1980. Let me look that up." He says, "You're considered a good borrower. You automatically qualify." And so that's why we're doing an application with them, who we didn't even know. We paid the loan off 20 years ago. But he remembered that we had one and researched enough to figure out that we qualify. And so we're going down that path with him. And so those are some of the different funding opportunities that we're looking at. We realize money's tight here in Juneau. If you found somebody tall in a Norwegian sweater that was a leprechaun, then obviously we would like to see it go towards the Coconut Power Link, because that's the one where we have fewer options to finance. Bradley has a lot of interest due to the size and the fact that utilities are backing it.
Gotcha. Senator Rocher.
Thank you, through the chair. So was there a limit we were qualified for, did he say?
Excuse me.
How much would we be qualified for? You said we were pre-qualified.
Well, through the chair, that was part of the application process, because sometimes it's 80% and then they look at match, and then they have to determine what is considered match. And so those are the conversations that we're having, is because as I say, stack is a little bit different. There might be where we might need to bond partially, and then we get 80% from USDA. So those are some of the financial modeling that we're trying to run to determine what is going to be the capital stack and the cost to the consumer.
Philip, so it's a real,
Senator Rocher.
it's a little more complicated than just flat qualified for X amount of dollars.
Yeah, through the chair, very much so.
Okay.
A perfect example, and I'll use the Department of Energy funding, going back to the Bradley. They don't require you to pay the loan back until after it's in service. Where if you use Department of Agriculture loan, they want to see payback starting within 2 years, whether it's built or not. So one has a 3/8, one has a 1/8, but they have different qualifications in the sense it's a numbers game to look to see what has the best impact, because obviously you would want to go, when you look at it on the surface, USDA T-bond 1/8 is a great deal. But if Department of Energy is T-bond plus 3/8, but it delays your financing with no penalty until after it's in service, there's a value to that. And so those are the things that we are modeling and trying to figure out what is the best stack. Because our board and obviously the utility boards are going to be asking those same questions.
Appreciate the qualification. Thank you.
I guess that's where I do have a couple more slides just in general on AEA. But I don't want to, if there's any other questions on the SIP link, the Coconut Power Link or Bradley.
I don't see any.
All right. Next item is we have the Railbelt Transmission Organization. I did mention that.
I just want to point out that much of what the legislature and what AEA is focused on here is how to fund a project with government money in one form or fashion. So he acknowledged that the $200 and some million that we have for this project was already given to us by the federal government, and we need to find more money. Okay, so where are you going to find the more money? Well, the easiest thing is to just go back to the federal government and say, hey, we need more money. I'm interested to know if whether this is something that the state of Alaska wants to pony up a bond. So we're going to go into debt, and Alaskans are going to pay that back into the future to get the 200 million, not 200 million, 200. What was the size of the Bradley Lake project? It was $200 million or $206 million, something like that. But what is the kilowatt usage? Anyway, will Alaskans go into debt in order to help reduce the long-term cost of energy? Okay, that's question number one. Question number two would be, what industry would be willing to help with that cost for some reduction in rate or some benefit going forward, whether it's a tax rate or rebate or something like that. So is there industry, private money that would help with building something like that? I don't know. I don't know the question. I know that you got project money that I'm being told is easier to come by than your seed money for the gas line project. This is the $40 billion that's going to need to be funded for long-term capital projects that are utility projects. I just dumped my liquid over here. For utility projects, that funding is out there in the private market. It's out there. So I don't think that the big dollar figures here is really that big of a challenge. We've just got to move it forward. That's my gut, my take on it. I'm not sitting there in the hot seat, and I'm not Curtis there. I don't have all the information, but what I have been told is investors like municipal or state projects that have a good return going forward, a guaranteed return going forward, and so that big dollar figure is usually available in the private market. All right, we only got a couple minutes left of this, and I'm not sure.
It is currently in hearing the fourth week. It is with AEA and the utilities, in addition to the Railbelt Reliability Council, is for the RTO. The RTO did receive its certificate to operate from the RCA in May 6, 2026. And on July 1st, the RTO proposed an open access tariff transmission with the RCA, and that's what they're currently adjudicating. And they're supposed to have an order due by June 4th, 2026, fairly quick. But at the end of the day, that doesn't resolve all the outstanding issues. It creates the AO, it gives us the tariff. Now we've got to study what is the tariff modeling once the RCA, how do you lift certain costs? The other thing, and I'll just say this because it's an open doc and I want to be careful, but there's 15 interveners. So I don't know at the end of the day when the commission comes out with their final ruling, if we've made 15 people happy or not. And the next case would be they could adjudicate it in the courts if they did not feel that it was satisfactory. So it's not just AEA and the utilities. We have other friends involved in this. And so we're working through that process.
So that open access tariff, transmission tariff, is going to go to your bill, my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong there, HEA folks. In order to pay for whatever the RTO is going to do here, we're going to end up seeing higher costs on our utility bills, our electric bills.
Yes. So
Good.
one item I just want to bring is the renewable energy fund, which is round 18. We did send to the legislature 29 applications totaling $41 million for consideration for the FY27 capital budget. I think I will just leave it there because, again, it's a matter of math and whether there's funding or not. These are all good projects. And in the back of the PowerPoint and the addendum, we list the projects. We've sent the projects with all the background.
Okay, there's $40 million right there of your 200. I don't know how much of this is all state money or some of it's federal money, but it's probably, since it was in the capital budget, it's probably state money. I'm chomping at the bit here to show you something else.
On them. One thing we know is this program has displaced about 13 million gallons a year, about 120 since the beginning of it. And we're able to, a lot of communities are able to get additional funding from private or federal sources to help do some of these projects.
So we've displaced, meaning we didn't need 120 million gallons of diesel from a state that produces natural resources, is a natural resource producer and has a refinery here and refines our own diesel and avgas or jet fuel at least. So it's a good thing that we're spending $40 million of state money in order to not use 120 million gallons of diesel. Somebody needs to do the math here of what the cost per gallon of diesel is that we've just avoided by doing these projects. I'm not the I don't do public math in my head, but I would imagine that that's probably quite a bit of money. Okay.
Bradley Lake was a REF project. Way back when they used the REF project and utilities were willing to match the state for $1 million. And that's when we did the first $2 million worth of work and went, this is a viable project. We need to take it to the next step. And now we're with FERC. And it's, like I said, that's probably the closest example for many. Rural energy infrastructure. Again, these are, and I appreciate those that the two of the powerhouses when they are, when we're constructing them in South Central Alaska and the tours. But we have 170 of them in rural communities. We have about $300 million in deferred maintenance. Bulk fuel, we have over 400 facilities and $1 billion. And when I say we, AEA does not own this. Our statutes say we may, but a lot of times I think the state has taken on an AEA the moral obligation of helping these communities in rural Alaska with their powerhouse and bulk fuel needs. So when I say we will take site control. We will work with the communities, bring in the new powerhouse, do the bulk rail upgrades, and then we give it back to the community. With that, though, which actually is new from I think last year, we've been working closely with the Denali Commission and partner with Alaska Native Health Consortium as well as AVAC, the Alaska Village Electric Co-op, and we received $100 million from the EPA for infrastructure upgrades, and that focus was on bulk fuel tanks. And so we've identified when we've met, we have a list of vulnerable communities, the top 25 that we're required to do both powerhouse and bulk fuel. And we identified the top 10 and we've agreed these are the 10. We're responsible for about 5 of them. AVAC is going to do the other 5. And so it's not quite 50-50. It's maybe 60-40, depends on what needs and the size of the communities. But the best part about that $100 million, it does not require a state match. I will say on a note that Lee Zeldin, when he's the administrator of EPA, came up last year and said that his goal was to have people wearing shirts. I love the EPA, and I would say I'm looking for my shirt because nobody else has given us $100 million. Mm-hmm. And we've Julie Kitka and I, we've gone, we're asking, is there another $100 million available? Because we'd like to see this continue. Another note, and this was the USDA Rural Services grant, a high energy grant. This one's kind of, we qualified for a $2 million grant. And when I was in DC in December, we met with them, met with the assistant secretary, ran through our program, what we do. And so we had already successfully won the $2 million grant. And it wasn't too long before we came back going, we have discretionary funding of say $5 million more. Can you use it? The answer was yes. And so in February, I signed a grant agreement for an additional $5 million for maintenance and improvements for bulk fuel tanks in certain communities that are not getting complete replacements, but getting that. So what you will see in the capital or in the budget is a request for Federal Receipt Authority to take these funds. But again, does not require any state match. So we continue to look for these opportunities.
So, Mr. Thayer, I have a question.
Yes, and I have an answer.
Well, maybe you don't know what my question is. So right now, the Finance Committee is looking at deferred maintenance for schools. 4 of those requests on that list are for bulk fuel restoration problems. Can't you guys do that?
Madam Chair, we don't have the funding for it. I'm saying these are designated projects that have been signed off by the Denali Commission and that. But what I can tell you is there are, of those 4 communities, if we get another round of funding at $100 million, which we're trying for, the committee of Nepaskiak is number 6 on the list on the second round. The community of Marshall is number 14 on the list, and Hooper Bay is number 15 on the list. So if we were to get funding for those, they're pretty high on the list for the next round of funding. We don't have direct funds available this year. I'll just say that this year, the capital budget does not include any money for powerhouses or bulk fuel. So the state is not investing into it, but we do have the $55 million from the feds that are investing. So if we were to get that additional funding, then these communities, the community of Gamble would actually be a number 111 on the list, and that's because we recently completed for the Native Village of Gamble repairs of done some early operation and maintenance for them. So yes, we could do it if we had funding, and that's the ranking. 6, 14, and 15 is what the ranking is. When we've talked to the EPA and they said, "Do you have a second round?" These are the communities, and that's where they fall out on the ranking. So potentially.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just in closing, I always like to bring up the Circuit Rider program. We do have these 4 gentlemen. They do travel all over Alaska.
Thank you for traveling all over Alaska. We're going to stop there. So I hope that you get a flavor when the legislature gets together and talks about projects, about things. It really doesn't matter what it is. The only source of money that people are looking for in the legislature are government centric, right? There's not a real good conversation happening about the economic engine being the source of the solutions for many of the things that we want to do. Okay. This reinforces the argument that I have about our legislature, that it does not care about the private sector. It doesn't look to the private sector for solutions to any of the problems. It is looking to government, to taxation, to federal dollars, which is taxation, which is debt and future generations taxation at this point. That's what the legislature looks at. It's not having a conversation about energy in relation to economic demand or private companies who are helping or demanding or going to benefit from this, right? It isn't a conversation that involves the private sector. It doesn't. It's the legislature's all about federal dollars and government money. I guess in my mind, what I'm trying to communicate is something that we can't really see because we don't live in another state. In other states, they have conversations about what would be the impact of us spending debt money on the private economy. Well, this money would reduce the cost of electricity over a certain time period, and that would lead to economic benefit in these companies. And then you'd have these companies up here that say, you know what, this is exactly what we want. We're even willing to sign long-term agreements or whatever. We're going to chip in here if it means that we've got low-cost electricity. I don't know what the public-private partnership, the using the energy of the private economy to help with some of these projects. You don't even have that pressure from the grassroots with the legislature. It's all looking and reliant upon government money. And we're looking, notwithstanding the Trump years, we're looking at a certain level of the population that wants to see our oil and gas industry dry up, go away. I want to try to show you something here. Back to the Energy Authority website. I found it once, and I'm going to show you how. Try to show you how to find it again. All right. So we're back to the AEA website. You remember at the beginning of today's show that he was talking about the library, that they've got a library of information. They got 12,000 documents or something. Okay, so this is what he's referring to as this library link. So you click on the library link and you go access this digital library access. Okay, so now you got to know what you're looking for, or click up here to browse. So the way they've got this laid out is by years. So I just started doing a little bit of investigating, 2020 to 2025. So that's basically when I served in the legislature. So what is important? What are the categories of information that they have here? Okay. So we have heat recovery, electric vehicle, biomass, and all I'm going to try to do is show you where the center mass is on the collection of information. That kind of tells you what they were focused on, right? So if you would think if they were trying to build a plan for a hydroelectric dam somewhere, then you'd have a lot of information being stored about hydroelectric dams. So if we click on this, and I don't know whether this is going to support my theory or not because I haven't clicked on it before. Okay, so you've got five different subsections here, and this is pages of articles. So that's, what is it, 5 different articles? Bradley Lake. Okay, so in 2020, there was quite a bit of motion going on, activity. Biomass, 3. It's a lot of pages, but there's 3 articles. The intertie, number of articles. So we've been talking about this intertie for quite a while, right? PCE, village efficiency, 1 article. Wind, 1 article. Okay, that's in 2020. Let's jump over here to 2021. Renewable energy. Check this out. This is what I'm trying to get to. 2021, we started talking about renewable energy. And this is where the focus went with AEA, hydro. The reason that it went there is because there was lots of federal dollars flowing in. 22, renewable energy. Lots of different projects. 15 applications for this. Everybody wanted to get in on it because you got a lot of federal dollars flowing in for renewable energies. And what's flowing in now for renewable energy? It was all political. It was all President Biden and the left throwing a bunch of money at renewable energy, and now it's dried up. You don't hear people talking about the renewable energy because there's no federal dollars tied to it. There's no economic demand for renewable energy projects because they're not cost effective. They require federal dollars in order for them to make sense. That's 2022. Did we look at this one already? 2023. Let's see. There's GRIP funding, renewable energy. More documents in 2023. No, I'm not passing judgment on any of the documents or anything. I'm just trying to show kind of where the AEA was thinking with regard to how much it's collecting of information on particular subjects. And this renewable energy focus. Wind in 2024. 1 document. A little fewer, but still a lot in 2024. Intertie. Quite a bit. Hydro. But that's it. Hydro is Bradley Lake. That's what the state of Alaska is focused on for hydro is Bradley Lake because it's what we have. 2025. Renewable energy. Last year. 3. Intertie. We got more. Lots of focus on the intertie this year. And that's because we've got money and we passed the bill that said we're going to get it done by a certain time and we need to get it done, right? Hydro for 25. Okay, so this doesn't really tell us anything. It's kind of gee whiz, right? 2026, current year. There's not even a listing for renewable yet. So the value of that is only to show you that it appears that there's a shift in focus for AEA to hydro and kind of away from this renewable energy. It got 1 mention on this in 1 slide here. Now, there may be other presentations in the legislature where it shows more about renewable energy, But the point that I'm trying to get at is over the last few years, that's what we've been focused on. That's where we've been spending federal money on. And I bet you that we've got somewhere, it would get us somewhere closer to the $200 million that we need for a Bradley Lake project that we've already spent in renewable energy on other projects, other solar or wind projects. All because of federal dollars is where that's being earmarked for that. And that's what the priority for each one of the states was, right? But for the state of Alaska, our private industry is not clamoring for, I don't know, maybe they are, and we're not hearing it. It's not being portrayed in the legislature. And I can tell you in the 6 years that I served there, which the longer I get away, have not spent, the longer the time that I have not spent in the legislature, the less fresh this data is and relevant it is. But we don't have a lot of pressure. We don't have a lot of conversation from the private economy that's saying, hey, we need to address this issue. It is driven by where are we getting the dollars? If we've got dollars, then we're going to focus on this project. I don't know. What is the takeaway? The takeaway is we need our legislature to be focused on growth of private sector jobs and economy. We need that. We need low-cost energy. We need reliable low-cost energy. And that is hydro, that is coal, that is natural gas. It isn't projects and focusing on other projects that are taking up space and copper and resources and all of the attention it takes to get projects done, right? Lawyers and engineering and all of that. We don't need all of that for projects that aren't going to be firm and reliable for the future, which is our large scale solar projects. We don't need that. We need to focus on the things that work in Alaska. I hope that that's the direction that the AEA is going. The question needs to be asked is, from the statutory perspective and the administrative order perspective from the governor, there is a need, there's a demand to further the Susitna-Watana Dam by statute. So what is the action that's being taken this year? What is projected next year? What is the funding required? Where is the funding source going to be? What is the decision-making process or decisions that are necessary at the state level, at our legislature, to fund a project that by statute is supposed to happen? Because if we go back to it, we go back to that document that I showed. I think it was this one. No, I'm sorry. It's not that one. It's this one. This is what the AEA document said it's worth to the economy. The cost benefit analysis would generate billions of dollars in energy savings for the Railbelt and would provide significant long-term benefit to the economy. Okay? If the cost is going to be 10 cents per kilowatt to get it done, that's to the ratepayer. We're going to pay an additional 10 cents until that thing's paid off. Is that worth it to us in order to get a low-cost energy that we turn over to our kids? Because once it's paid off, then that rate can come down, right? And here's a bigger point to be taken away for this legislative session. You know what competes for this? You know what competes for a big project like this? The operating budget. And some are going to say the permanent fund dividend. If you're looking at the permanent fund earnings, like the government does right now, like our state legislature does, is all of the permanent fund earnings that we draw on a 5% market value are available for government spend, and the permanent fund dividend is just another government spend. This is not what I think, but this is what their argument is. then it's competing with this a project like this that would reduce the cost of electricity for all of Alaskans. Well, at least Alaskans on the Railbelt. And it would also reduce the costs in Western Alaska or off the road network, because the PCE fund, if you are going to lower the cost of electricity, your PCE fund and the amount that's available for that subsidy for Western Alaska would increase. The point that I'm getting at is, if you're going to grow your economic engine, is that something that the legislature is focused on? I don't think so. I don't think that's what's the conversation's going on down there. Anyway. Yeah. And I don't know why that's showing up so big. That needs to not be. Oh, you know why? Because I made this screen bigger earlier. Whoop, let's go the opposite direction. Okay, that's better. Okay. Let's catch up on some talks here. Good evening, folks. Bradley Lake. Yeah, Alaska's good at studies. That is for sure. We will study things. We like to spend money on people. You know why? Because a lot of times the studies are coming out of the university system or somebody that's tied to the university system. Craig, you say J-Bear. I'm assuming that you're talking about the potential partners or who is going to be purchasing power. Why are there so many anti-resource development senators on the Senate Resources Committee? Yeah, good question. Why is Senator Kathy Giesel chair of the Resources Committee when she's not in favor of a gas line pipeline? She's putting forward a bill that basically would scuttle that project. Yeah, good question for the voters. Why not just make it a capital project? Craig says. That's a really good question. So let's just use round numbers, $100 million, $200 million, whatever number you want to throw at it in appropriations in a capital budget is going to compete with the same dollar figure of something in the operating budget. Or it's going to compete with the PFD. That's what the legislature is going to see. Remember, the PFD used to be paid right off the top, and you didn't have this conversation. But now that's not the way the cookie crumbles in the legislature now. If you had different people with different interpretations, then that possibly could be different. But that's not. The reality is that's not. So they're looking at all of permanent fund earnings as the legislature's to spend, and the PFD is just going to compete with all these other projects and all these other operating demands for operating budget, right? So that's why you don't get a $200 million project in the capital budget, is because you've got a large demand for spending with your operating budget. That's why it continues to grow. Eventually, there will be no dividend, and we won't be having this conversation about dividends. We will just have the conversation that says, hey, you've already consumed all of the permanent fund earnings. Why are you allocating 90% of it to operating budget? And here you get little leftovers for the capital budget. It'll be very clear then that the capital budget is competing with the operating budget. It's still competing with it now. You can use this straw man argument over here and say, oh, well, we're actually competing with the PFD because that's easier to take. It is the operating budget competing with the capital budget for spending. That's what's competing. That's the thing that's growing every year, is the operating budget. Fairbanks cost has went through the roof with no relief in sight. Yeah. It'd be interesting to know how many projects in Fairbanks are how much of the cost increase is due to renewable energy projects. Because their build is something that's going to reduce the cost of electricity, but it doesn't. Wherever it's been implemented, increases the cost of public offering of natural resource or electricity. We should not build anything new in Alaska without a guarantee that there will not be deferred maintenance. So let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, this is interesting because the deferred maintenance concept is well, let's just say not deferred maintenance, but maintenance concept is something that should be baked into the costs of projects and projection of what it affects future budgets. But that's, to the best of my knowledge, you know what? We get fiscal notes that show outward years or the out years of what the projected cost of a particular thing is, policy or thing that we're going to appropriate money for. The fiscal note will show out years. I'm not sure whether that fiscal note covers maintenance in the out years or whether it's just the operating expense in the out years. Meaning, does maintenance, excuse me, does maintenance fall into the operating expense? It probably does, now that I'm thinking about it, until it becomes deferred maintenance. And then it gets removed, that cost or that expense gets removed from the operating budget and puts in another balance sheet that says, hey, we recognize we have this expense for maintenance, but we're going to defer it into the future and not appropriate money for it or not fix that problem. So if it's a roof, we'll add it to the list of things that are in the deferred maintenance because we're not going to spend this year's money on that maintenance item, right? So it is no longer an operational item. But the operating budget for each one of these entities, whether it's school districts or cities or boroughs, state buildings, departments, all of it requires money to be spent on maintenance. And that is, you find that in your operating budget, or if there's major maintenance in your capital budget, right? So all of that maintenance is competing with all of the other things that are in your budget, like your pay and benefits. So every time you see a pay raise for state employees, every time you see a new program, like we're gonna start paying for childcare, for example. Okay, well, that's less money to spend on maintenance. And maintenance is usually the first thing that goes. It's like, well, it's way too easy to just move that maintenance item into deferred maintenance and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Someday it'll be an emergency and then we'll get emergency funding. Like the road that's here in Nikiski. You talk to Department of Transportation, they have no plans to reroute that road. You know the one right by South Miller Loop. The plan is to let the bluff encroach the road to a point where it becomes a crisis and then ask for federal dollars to fix it in an emergency. That's the plan. Now, luckily enough, we may have a pipeline built here shortly that will have to reroute the road, and that project won't be necessary. The emergency won't be necessary because that portion of the road will be rerouted. But that's down the road, assuming that we get a pipeline. If we don't get a pipeline, that's what DOT is going to do. They're going to allow that road to encroach, and once it's deemed unsafe, then they'll file for an emergency and get federal dollars to pay for it. That's our plan. Side note, do you really think that AKA LNG will really come to fruition? Hard to get excited about a project with no firm commitments or signed contracts. I am hopeful that it will. I am hopeful that it will. I think that the announcements that have been made thus far about notifications to shipbuilders to that we're going to need some ships, to steel producers, we're going to need pipe. All of those things need to be, like those are the T's and the I's that need to be crossed and dotted before you can come to a final investment decision. And again, if the question is about the dollar figures, the $40 billion, I don't know how to tell you how to get you comfortable with the fact that that money exists. That is the easy money to come up with. A long-term project like this that is a state-sponsored project, is a utility project, there are plenty of funds that want to invest in those projects. So getting the money the investment money is not the problem. That is not the problem. That's not the biggest problem that we've had. Up until now, the biggest problem had been getting to the final investment decision, finding somebody that was going to fork out the $150 million to do everything that's being done right now. So that's why I'm confident, is because I've been told by people in the industry that getting the $40 billion to find that investment it's not that big of a deal. Once you've got all your T's, all your ducks in a row, that money's gonna be there. What's happening over in the Middle East and our allies in Asia, the pressure's on to find an alternative source of natural gas for sure. So yeah, I am optimistic that we'll see a final investment decision and a go ahead with this project. And the sole reason for why I'm comfortable with that and confident with that is because I know that the problem is not finding $40 billion. That's not the problem. Craig says he would give up his PFD for worthwhile capital projects, but not Medicare expansion. Exactly, Craig. So, do you know how much we spend on the PFD every year? How much the legislature appropriates for the PFD? So, somewhere between 600 and 900 million is what we've been spending. $1,000 PFD, somewhere around there. Okay, I'm just using round numbers here just for scale. Okay. I forget exactly what it was. Maybe it's $600, $700 million per $1,000 PFD. And that depends on the number of people that are eligible for it. Okay. That's $1,000 check that goes to every eligible man, woman, and child. Okay. Couldn't the state turn around and say, well, that's $600 million. Could a portion of our $200 million cost for HEA result in a program where people choose to spend their dividend on that project? And in turn, if you do that, if you invest in it, then you get some sort of credit towards your utility bill in the future. No, some benefit for chipping in your dollars. And then you've got ownership in the project. Got ownership going forward. Or the state's just going to take it and they're going to say, okay, no dividend this year. We're going to take $400 million and put it towards this project. But then you don't have a benefit other than the cost of electricity, right? There's creative ways to tap into the private industry and to Alaskans to have buy-in into these projects rather than just look at it as a government-centric, one-size-fits-all. We're going to do big government. But I don't know. That's what it appears that's what the majority of Alaskans are wanting, is government to take care of them. We don't expect our legislature to come back to the private sector and say, hey, we need help from the private sector. We're not expecting that. We're not anticipating it as a alternative. That's literally what I think the government should be doing with regard to the permanent fund dividend. The statute says pay a statutory dividend, so pay a statutory dividend to the people, the owner of the resource. If this is going to be a socialist state and we're all resource owners of the state, then the byproduct and the dividend from the investment of those resources comes to the people, the owners, right? And then if the government needs more money, then they come to us and say, hey, we need more money for these projects. You want more lower cost electricity? Well, here's a way that you can help us get the electricity cost down. Otherwise, we're going to have to tax you. I mean, there's all sorts of creative ways that we could go about this in utilizing private sector and the things that private sector does well to help out. But we don't. The legislature is just focused on government-centric solutions. I hope tonight has kind of demonstrated that. It's all about where we can get grant money and federal dollars and state matches and take the dividend. I mean, it's all very few people are having the conversation that says, well, you can't take the dividend because there's private businesses that care about that. They'll say, well, there's people that are going to be hurt by it because they need that money to buy heating oil or groceries or whatever, right? But the legislature doesn't talk about it in terms of that money being spent in the private economy and benefiting the private economy for business owners in the economy. It's a complete disconnect. It's not just a budgeting problem. It's a energy problem. Because we're not considering the private sector as part of a solution or a partner in the problem. We're just looking for government solutions. Deferred maintenance is Michael Dukes, I think, is what you're referring to, their favorite word. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about deferred maintenance tomorrow morning when I'm on the show there. Rick says, I would like to see some big checks written and in a trust or maybe in the S&P. Yeah, imagine. My apologies there. Imagine what you or your kids could do with their dividend checks put away for savings for the future, right? For 18 years. I mean, it's phenomenal how much Alaskans are blind and are just trusting that the government's going to be there to take care of them, and we don't know and care about the levers of how things are getting financed. Yeah, skin in the game. I got you. Lisa says, good idea on that for electric, Ben. Over in Hawaii, there was credits towards electric when you installed solar, which hooked to the grid, and then eventually it went away. Yeah, because if you put a solar panel on the electric grid, you're going to need a battery to store that energy, and then the electric grid is going to need to pull that energy from your battery at a certain time that is beneficial and that it's usable. The electricity coming out of your solar panel can't go directly into the grid and be usable. That's what I'm being told. So you gotta charge your batteries, and then they'll pull from your batteries. But yes, I'm pretty sure that this it's probably because I've got a cold, but the name of the program is escaping me right at the moment. But it's where you put your solar panels on and then you sell the electricity back to the people. Thought, hey, look, we're going to be independent power producers. We're going to be able to either cut our bill down or eliminate our electric bill by selling power back. And it hasn't panned out the way that people thought it was going to pan out. Again, you have to realize that those solar panels are going to wear out sooner than you think, and then you'll have to replace them. And that cost is what? Well, if the federal government paid for you to put those solar panels up, then either you're going to have to pay for it in the future, or you're going to be looking for some subsidy or special program from the federal government. And that's probably what's going to happen in 20 years, right? There'll be a whole bunch of power panels that are obsolete. They're now needing to be replaced, and there'll be demand from the future generation that says, hey, we got all these panels. We need more federal dollars to replace them because we can't use them anymore. They're obsolete. Anyway. Anything government touches is suspect. It's more costly, takes longer. Anyway, I'm off on a soapbox here. Imagine if the state got royalties from gold and silver. Yeah, I don't know how much that would generate for state coffers. Nope. Over there, you feed back down the grid. Well, I'm not an expert in this. I am 100% a consumer of electricity. I pay my electric bill. I flip on the light switch. I don't have solar panels. I know just enough to be dangerous here. And what people have told me is that when you're using solar panels, you cannot just directly put that electricity generated onto the grid and into the grid. It's got to be processed first. Did I start late or just feel like talking tonight? Well, my clock here says I've been on for 1 hour and 34 minutes. I started just a few minutes after 7. So maybe you came in late. All right. Well, we're going to call it a night. I appreciate you checking in here. I hope that the information on the the AEA, the Alaska Energy Authority, has been helpful. You can go to their website and peruse. I pulled up a website, not a website, a picture a while ago. Let me see if I can find this quickly. I should be able to. This is a picture that I got from, yep, this is it right here. From the AEA website. AEA website. Let me share this. Okay. So somebody in the AEA has already done an assessment, and this is nothing more than dots on the map, but they've done an assessment of places in Alaska along the transmission line here. This is what I scoped it down to just where the Railbelt is here. Okay. These are what are potential sites for hydropower. Now I'm not suggesting that that every single one of these could be used for hydropower. I'm just saying that somebody has gone through and made an assessment that these sites are feasible or should be studied, right? Just to show you that there's a lot of potential out there. Whether you can develop it or not remains to be seen. But there's a lot of potential. But nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. Reducing the cost of electricity ought to be one of the primary things that we're expecting of our government for the private sector of Alaska. Reducing the cost of energy. It ought to be one of the things that every single one of our businesses, whether you're a farmer or a businessman have a business in the city, you're a family, everybody's suffering from high cost electricity. So one of the top priorities of any governor candidate or legislator ought to be lowering the cost of electricity. Matter of fact, if we're going to be pulling electricity from imported LNG, the price of electricity is going to go up. If you're going to create any sort of solution here with hydro, how are you going to pay for it? Well, your cost is going to go up. So there's likely nothing we can do to lower the cost of electricity in the very near term, in the short term. But what state are we handing over to our kids in the future? Are we going to hand over a state that has got a larger capacity for generating electricity, and once it's paid for, they're going to benefit with lower cost electricity? That's, if you want to find something that we should be able to rally around, regardless of political party, this should be one of it. This should be one of it. This should be it. This should be the thing that we rally around, is low cost electricity. You got so many other things that we can fight about, but figuring out this map and figuring out where we can get our low cost electricity from, that's what we should be doing. All right. I have to stop because I'm going to blow a big snotty booger if I don't. Thanks for hanging with me this evening, and I hope that I wasn't sniffling in your ear, because that's really gross. Tomorrow night I'm going to be at a meeting, and I will not be able to come on live at my normal regular time. So we will be back with you on Friday night. Again, if you have something that you want me to address, I haven't forgotten about the education bill. Maybe I'll bring that up this Friday. But if there's something you want to address, besides the whole meltdown on the House floor, the joint session here with Representative Fields, I'm not even going to touch that. Like, it's beneath us to have a conversation about this. The malarkey that happened there is just childish. That's all it is. It's unprofessional and childish, unbecoming a public servant. So we're not going to spend any time talking about that. Might be fun to pick on somebody, but we're not going to. Anyway, all right, this is it. We're now going to officially end the program. I've said that a couple times. Have a good night. Thanks for hanging out with me.